A boy pays just $1 for a broken German Shepherd. Everyone laughs, saying the dog is dangerous, useless, beyond saving. But when he brings her home, something happens that no one can explain. The dog doesn't act wild. She listens. She obeys commands no one ever taught her. It's like she's remembering another life, one filled with danger, loss, and secrets buried deep. Soon, people start showing up. Men claiming the dog isn't his, warning that she's a threat, demanding she be destroyed. But the boy sees what others don't. This dog isn't broken. She's trained for something powerful. And when the truth behind her scars comes out, it will shake the entire town. Because what this broken dog does next will test loyalty, courage, and the limits of what we call human. What if the only one who knows the truth isn't human at all? I'd love to know. Where are you watching from? Type it down below, and while you're here, subscribe so you'll always catch the next story. The autumn wind whistled through the gaps in the auction barn's weathered boards as Tobin Rook pushed his broom across the concrete floor. Dust motes danced in the shafts of late afternoon sunlight, while the usual Thursday crowd began filtering in, their boots scraping against the rough surface. He kept his head down, focusing on his work, but their voices carried. "Here come the broken ones," someone drawled, followed by scattered laughter. "Wonder what sad cases we'll see today." Tobin's grip tightened on the broom handle. He knew what they meant. Thursday afternoons were for the unadoptables, the animals that other shelters couldn't place. Most weeks, it made his heart ache. Today was no different. The metal doors creaked open wider as the first carriers came through. Tobin glanced up through his straw-colored bangs, trying to be subtle about his interest. That's when he saw her. A German Shepherd, proud even in defeat, being led in on a catch-pole. Her sable coat was marked with scars, but it was her eyes that caught him, amber and alert, taking in everything. "Got a live one here?" called out the handler, his voice tinged with nervous energy. "Someone better mark this one down quick." Tobin edged closer as they attached the paper tag to her temporary kennel. His stomach clenched as he read the words, "Broken, aggressive, one to dispose." The crowd gave the shepherd a wide berth, whispers rippling through the gathering. Tobin noticed how she tracked their movements, her posture tense but not threatening, until the man in the black jacket approached. It happened in an instant. The shepherd exploded into motion, lunging against the catch-pole with a snarl that made everyone jump back. The man in the black jacket stumbled backward, cursing. People gasped. Someone laughed nervously. "See? Told you she was dangerous," the handler said, shaking his head. "No saving this one." But Tobin had seen something different in that moment. The fear in the dog's eyes, the way she'd only reacted to that specific trigger. Before he could stop himself, he stepped forward. "Hold on," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. The crowd turned to stare at him, but he kept his eyes on the shepherd. Slowly, he raised his palm and spoke one word. "Sits." The effect was immediate. The shepherd's ears pricked forward, and she dropped into a perfect sit, her eyes locked on Tobin. The silence in the barn was absolute. With trembling fingers, Tobin reached into his pocket and pulled out his entire wealth, one crumpled dollar bill he'd earned from his morning's work. "I'll take her," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. Laughter erupted around him. "Kid, you don't want that one," someone called out. "She's broken goods." "Did you see what just happened?" another voice added. "That dog's a menace." But Tobin was already moving forward, holding out his dollar. The handler looked uncertainly between Tobin and his supervisor, who just shrugged. "Your funeral, kid," the supervisor said, pushing the clipboard toward him. "Sign here." Tobin's signature was shaky, but he managed to write it clearly enough. As he clipped his own lead to the shepherd's collar and carefully removed the catch-pole, the jeers continued. "Hope you've got good insurance. Better sleep with one eye open. That dog'll tear you apart first chance it gets." Tobin ignored them all, speaking softly to the shepherd as they made their way to the door. "It's okay, girl. We're getting out of here." Outside, the autumn air felt cleaner somehow. Away from the crowd's judgment, Tobin could feel some of his tension easing. The shepherd walked beside him, her steps measured and careful. "You need a name," he said quietly, studying her profile. Something about her bearing, her dignity despite her scars, reminded him of stories his father used to tell about World War II. "How about Fritzi? It's German, like you." The shepherd's ear twitched at the sound, and Tobin felt a small smile tugging at his lips. "Fritzi it is, then." As they walked home, Tobin's emotions swung between fear and fierce resolve. Every few steps, he found himself studying his new companion. She wasn't vicious. He was sure of that now. There was something else going on, something in her past that made her react the way she did, the way she'd responded to that German command. At a crosswalk, Tobin quietly said, "Platz." Immediately, Fritzi lowered herself into a down position, her movements smooth and practiced. Tobin's heart beat faster. This was no ordinary shelter dog. She'd had serious training. As they waited for the light to change, Tobin reached down and gently touched Fritzi's head. She remained perfectly still, those intelligent amber eyes fixed on him with an intensity that made him both nervous and determined. Whatever her story was, whatever had happened to her, he knew one thing for certain. She wasn't broken. She was misunderstood. And somehow, he was going to prove it. The way home stretched before them, and Tobin felt the weight of his decision with every step. But when Fritzi looked up at him, matching his pace perfectly, he knew he'd made the right choice. $1 had bought him something priceless, a chance to save a life that everyone else had written off as worthless. As they walked, the autumn leaves swirled around their feet, and Tobin thought about all the work ahead of them. But for now, they just walked together, a boy and his dog, leaving the jeers and judgment behind them at the auction barn. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the driveway as Tobin approached his house, Fritzi walking steadily beside him. His mother's beat-up sedan was already parked out front, which meant she was home early from her cleaning jobs. His stomach tightened with anxiety. "Mom?" he called out, opening the front door carefully. "I need to show you something." Marla Rook appeared in the hallway, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Her tired eyes widened at the sight of the large German shepherd. "Tobin James Rook, what have you done?" Fritzi stood perfectly still, her ears forward but relaxed. Tobin kept a firm grip on the leash. "She was going to be put down, Mom. They said she was broken, but she's not. Watch this." He raised his hand. "Sits." Fritzi sat immediately, her posture military straight. "She's huge," Marla said, taking a step back. "And those scars. Tobin, she looks dangerous." "She's not, Mom. She's trained, really well trained. She just gets scared sometimes, but—" "Scared dogs bite, honey." Marla's voice was gentle but firm. "We can't afford a liability like this. What if she hurts someone?" Before Tobin could respond, a deep voice came from the open doorway. "That's quite a specimen you've got there, son." They turned to see Zed Harrow standing on the porch, his silver hair catching the sunlight. The retired Army medic lived 2 houses down and often helped neighborhood kids with odd jobs. He leaned slightly on his cane as he studied Fritzi. "May I?" he asked, gesturing to come inside. Marla nodded, though she stayed well back. Zed moved with careful precision, his limp more pronounced than usual. He stopped several feet from Fritzi and observed her. "Look at that stillness," he said quietly. "That's not regular dog training. That's specialized work." "What do you mean?" Tobin asked. "The way she holds herself, how she's constantly aware but not reactive." Zed tilted his head. "Try some hand signals with her." Tobin raised his hand, palm up, then lowered it slowly. Fritzi immediately went into a down position. He moved his hand in a sharp right angle. She rolled to her side. Every motion he tried, she followed with perfect precision. "Just as I thought," Zed said. "She's responding to silent commands, probably trained in German or Czech. That's common for working dogs." He looked at Marla. "This isn't some random aggressive animal. This dog had a job once, and a serious one." Marla's expression softened slightly. "But why was she at the auction barn?" "Budget cuts, unit dissolutions, sometimes politics." Zed's face darkened. "I've seen good dogs and good handlers discarded by the system. Something triggered her, didn't it? At the barn?" Tobin nodded. "A man in a black jacket. She just exploded." "PTSD," Zed said simply. "Dogs get it too, especially working dogs who've seen bad things." He turned to Marla. "With the right handling, she could be one of the safest dogs you'll ever meet. But she needs structure, consistency, and respect for her triggers." Marla looked at her son's hopeful face, then back at the shepherd. "What would we need to do?" Over the next hour, they established ground rules. Fritzi would be leashed outside the yard. The backyard fence needed checking for gaps. She would have a strict routine for meals and walks. Zed demonstrated basic drills, showing Tobin how to maintain the training she already knew. "Always praise softly," he explained, running Fritzi through simple exercises. "Working dogs respond better to calm approval than excitement. Watch her body language. If she stiffens or her ears go back, something's triggering her. Create space immediately." Tobin absorbed every word, watching how Zed's quiet confidence seemed to resonate with Fritzi. The shepherd's amber eyes stayed focused, alert but relaxed. "I have some old training manuals," Zed said. "They might help you understand her background better. But remember, she's not a pet project. She's a professional trying to find her way back to stability." That evening, after setting up Fritzi's bed in the mudroom, Tobin sat at the kitchen table while his mother prepared dinner. Through the window, they could see Fritzi exploring the backyard's perimeter, her movements methodical. "Mrs. Henderson called," Marla said quietly. "She heard about what happened at the auction. Said we're being reckless, keeping a dangerous dog in the neighborhood." Tobin's jaw tightened. "She's not dangerous. She's hurt. There's a difference." "I know, honey." Marla stirred the pot on the stove. "But people are going to talk. Are you ready for that?" Instead of answering, Tobin pulled out a small notebook he'd grabbed from his school supplies. On the first page, he wrote, "Day 1 responds to sits, sit, plats, down, roll, side. Stays calm with quiet praise. Triggers, black jackets." "What's that for?" his mother asked. "Evidence," Tobin said firmly. "Zed says she's trained, not broken. I'm going to prove it. Every command she knows, every good thing she does, I'm writing it all down. Then when people say she's just some mean junkyard dog, I'll have proof they're wrong." Marla watched her son's determined expression, so like his father's when he'd set his mind to something. Through the window, Fritzi had settled into a perfect downstay, watching the yard with professional focus. "Just promise me you'll be careful," she said softly, "both with her and with people's reactions. Sometimes proving people wrong takes more patience than proving something right." Tobin nodded, adding another note to his book. "Good with routine. Checks perimeter. Stays alert but calm." He looked up at his mother. "We'll show them, Mom. We'll show them who she really is. As the evening settled around their small house, Fritzy's quiet presence seemed to fill the spaces between them. She wasn't just a dog anymore. She was a mystery to be solved, a truth to be uncovered. In his notebook, Tobin wrote one final note for the day. Not broken. Just needs someone to believe in her. The crunch of tires on gravel broke the peaceful afternoon rhythm. Through the kitchen window, Tobin watched a sleek black SUV pull up alongside Deputy Klein's patrol car. His heart sank as he recognized the gold Culpeper security logo on the vehicle's door. "Mom," he called out, his voice tight. "We've got company." Marla moved to the window, her face paling slightly as she watched Vance Culpeper step out of the SUV. The man's expensive suit seemed out of place against their modest yard. Deputy Klein followed, adjusting his uniform belt with nervous hands. In the mudroom, Fritzy's ears pricked forward, her body going still. "Keep her inside," Zed said quietly from where he sat at their kitchen table. He hadn't left since helping them establish Fritzy's routine, as if sensing trouble would follow. The knock came sharp and authoritative. Marla smoothed her cleaning uniform and opened the door. Culpeper didn't wait for an invitation. "Mrs. Rook," he said, stepping past her with Deputy Klein at his heels. "I'm afraid we have a serious situation here." His cold eyes swept the kitchen, landing on Tobin. "That shepherd your boy took from the auction. She's one of mine. A dangerous animal that escaped during transport. She needs to be put down immediately." "That's not true," Tobin said, his voice shaking slightly. "She's trained. She knows commands. She's not dangerous." "Son," Deputy Klein cut in, "Mr. Culpeper here runs the biggest security dog operation in 3 states. If he says that dog is a threat, then he can prove it." Zed's quiet voice carried authority as he stood, favoring his bad leg. "Legal ownership requires documentation. Registration papers, medical records, training certificates. Where are they?" Culpeper's smile didn't reach his eyes. "A simple misunderstanding. I'm prepared to compensate the boy for his dollar investment." He pulled out a leather wallet. "Let's say 500? That's more than generous for a condemned animal." "She's not for sale," Tobin said firmly. 1,000 then." Culpeper's voice hardened. "But this needs to end now. That dog is a liability. One wrong move, one triggered episode, and someone gets hurt. The lawsuit alone would destroy your mother financially." Marla flinched at that, but stood straighter. "If you have legal claim to this dog, file it properly. Until then, we're done here." "Deputy," Culpeper said sharply, "explain the consequences of harboring a dangerous animal." Klein cleared his throat. "Well, there's strict leash laws in town, and if we get reports of aggressive behavior, animal control has to respond. Could mean fines, maybe worse." "We understand the laws," Zed said evenly, "and we'll follow them. But right now you're trespassing. Unless you have a warrant or proof of ownership, I suggest you leave." Culpeper's face tightened with anger. "This isn't over. That dog is a threat to public safety, and I won't be responsible for what happens when, not if, she snaps." He turned to Tobin. "You think you're helping her? You're just putting everyone around you at risk." He stalked out, Deputy Klein following with an apologetic glance back. Through the window, they watched both vehicles pull away, leaving only dust and tension behind. "He's lying," Tobin said into the silence. "About Fritzy being his." "Yes," Zed agreed, "but he's worried about something. The question is what?" That evening, Tobin sat cross-legged in the backyard with his notebook while Fritzy went through her perimeter check. The shepherd's movements were precise, professional, nothing like the dangerous animal Culpeper had described. "Platz," he whispered. Fritzy dropped into a perfect down. "Bleib." She held the position as he walked away, released her with "Frey." Each command went into his notebook, along with notes about her responses. Inside, he could hear his mother on the phone, her voice tight as she answered another concerned neighbor. The whispers were spreading, about the boy with the vicious dog, about the danger they were bringing to the neighborhood. But as Tobin watched Fritzi's focused attention, her controlled power, he knew they were wrong. "They don't know you," he told her softly, "but they will. We'll show them who you really are." Fritzi's ears swiveled toward him, her amber eyes intelligent and calm. In his notebook, Tobin wrote, "Day 2, perfect recall, holds positions until released, watches everything but stays controlled, not aggressive, protective." The evening settled around them like a siege, but Tobin felt stronger with each command documented, each moment of trust built between him and Fritzi. Let them whisper. Let them worry. The truth was in every page of his notebook, in every steady look from those amber eyes. Marla came out to call him in for dinner, pausing to watch Fritzi snap to attention at a quiet "sits" from Tobin. "Maybe we should put up security cameras," she said. "After today?" Tobin nodded, understanding her worry. Culpepper's visit had changed things, turned their quiet home into contested ground. But as Fritzi fell into perfect heel position beside him, he felt ready for whatever came next. Inside, he added one more note to his growing record. Shows no fear of threats, stays focused on protecting her people, like she knows that's still her job. The whispers might paint them as a threat, but Tobin knew different. In Fritzi's discipline, in her quiet strength, he saw not danger but dedication, and he would prove it, one command, one day at a time. The spring afternoon hummed with the lazy sounds of suburban life. Tobin sat on his front porch steps, watching Fritzi maintain her alert but relaxed posture beside him. Her rehabilitation was going well. 3 weeks of steady progress, careful routines, and growing trust. A man in a black leather jacket appeared at the corner, strolling casually along the sidewalk. In an instant, Fritzi's demeanor transformed. Her muscles went rigid, ears pinned forward, eyes locked not on the man's face but on his jacket. Tobin felt the leash go taut. "Easy, girl," he murmured, keeping his voice steady despite his racing heart. "Bleib." Fritzi held her position, but her whole body trembled with tension. The man passed without incident, yet she tracked the jacket until it disappeared from view. Tobin made a mental note. Black jackets triggered something in her past. Down the street, Mrs. Chen was unloading groceries while her 3-year-old daughter Emma played with chalk on the sidewalk. A delivery truck rounded the corner too fast, its driver distracted by his phone. Emma, chasing a piece of rolling chalk, tottered into the street. Everything happened in seconds. Fritzi's ears shot up. Before Tobin could process the danger, she lunged forward with explosive power, breaking his grip on the leash. His heart stopped, but this wasn't aggression. This was purpose. The shepherd raced toward Emma, angling her body with precision. As the truck's brakes squealed, Fritzi's shoulder connected with the toddler, pushing her clear. The truck's bumper caught Fritzi's flank instead, sending her tumbling. "No!" Tobin sprinted toward them as neighbors poured from their houses. Emma was crying but unhurt, scooped up by her hysterical mother. Fritzi struggled to her feet, favoring her right side but still alert, still watching the child. "She saved her," Mrs. Chen sobbed, clutching Emma. "Your dog saved my baby." The delivery driver stumbled out, face pale. "I didn't see. It happened so fast. Is everyone okay?" A small crowd gathered, voices overlapping. "Did you see that? She pushed the little girl out of the way. That dog's a hero." Tobin reached Fritzi, who was trembling but standing. He knelt beside her, checking for injuries while murmuring praise. Good girl, such a good girl. You protected her. You did your job. A familiar black SUV pulled up. Vance Culpepper stepped out, his timing suspicious. That dangerous animal just lunged at a child, he announced loudly. This is exactly what I warned about. It needs to be contained before someone gets hurt. That's not what happened, Mrs. Chen protested. She saved Emma from being hit. A trained protection dog can be unpredictable, Culpepper continued smoothly. What looks like helping today could be attacking tomorrow. We can't take that risk. Confusion rippled through the crowd. Tobin saw doubt creep into some faces, replacing their initial awe. He kept one hand on Fritzy's shoulder, feeling her continued tremors. Not from pain, he realized, but from the black jacket Culpepper wore. Marla arrived from work, taking in the scene quickly. She pulled out her phone and started recording. Mrs. Chen, would you mind stating exactly what happened, for the record? One by one, witnesses described what they'd seen. Fritzy's precise movement, her careful angle, how she'd taken the impact to protect the child. Marla documented everything, her face set with determination. Zed appeared with his medical kit, kneeling to examine Fritzy. Bruising, he said quietly. Maybe some pulled muscles. She needs a proper vet check, but nothing seems broken. He looked at Tobin. Notice how she's still watching the child? Even hurt, she's focused on protection. Culpepper tried to interject again about public safety, but Mrs. Chen cut him off. That dog is welcome near my family anytime, she declared firmly. She's not dangerous. She's a guardian angel. Later, after the crowd dispersed and Fritzy had been checked by the vet, Tobin sat with her in the backyard. The shepherd was sore, but resting comfortably on her bed, pain medication taking the edge off. The jacket, Tobin told Zed, who'd stayed to help monitor Fritzy. She went rigid when she saw it, before anything else happened. It's like she remembers something bad. Zed nodded. Trauma triggers. Common in working dogs who've been through something rough. We'll need to work on controlled exposure. Help her understand not all black jackets mean danger. But she still did her job, Tobin said proudly, scratching behind Fritzy's ears. Even with the trigger there, she knew what mattered most. That's the thing about true protection training, Zed replied. It becomes part of who they are. The real question is, where did she learn it? And why does Culpepper want her destroyed instead of celebrated? Marla joined them, showing her phone. I've got 8 solid witness statements recorded, plus Mrs. Chen wants to write a letter to the newspaper about her guardian angel. She smiled. Let him try to spin this now. Tobin watched Fritzy doze, her ears still twitching at every sound. Today had revealed so much. Her triggers, yes, but also her unwavering instinct to protect. Whatever her past held, whatever Culpepper's agenda was, one thing was clear. This was no dangerous animal. This was a hero waiting to be understood. Mrs. Chen appeared at the back gate with Emma carrying a bag. We brought some special treats for Fritzy, she called softly, and Emma made her a thank you picture. As they watched the toddler carefully place her crayon drawing near Fritzy's bed, Tobin saw tears in his mother's eyes. The shepherd's tail thumped gently, her watchful gaze soft as Emma patted her head. This was the truth they needed to share, not Culpepper's warnings, but moments like these. A trained protector doing exactly what she was meant to do, no matter what triggers or traumas lay in her past. Zed helped Tobin apply an ice pack to Fritzy's bruised flank. We'll start working on the jacket issue tomorrow, he said. Small steps, positive associations. She's proven she can overcome her triggers when it matters. Now we help her heal, both the physical bruises and the deeper ones. The morning after Fritzy's heroic save, Zed arrived early with a handheld scanner. Tobin watched curiously as the retired medic ran the device over Fritzy's shoulders and neck. Most working dogs have microchips, Zed explained. Could tell us where she came from? The scanner beeped. Zed's eyebrows shot up as he read the display. Well now, this is interesting. Marla leaned forward. What does it say? This chip's registered to FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency, Unit 42, Collapse Detection and Rescue Division. Zed looked at Fritzi with new respect. She wasn't bred for guard work at all. She was trained to save lives. Tobin knelt beside Fritzi, running his hand over her scarred coat. Collapse detection? What's that mean? Search and rescue, specifically in fallen buildings, Zed explained. After earthquakes, explosions, structural failures, these dogs go in to find survivors. They're selected for intelligence and gentleness. Has to be a dog that won't panic in tight spaces or hurt someone they find. But Culpepper said she came from his guard dog program, Marla said. Which makes no sense, Zed replied. These dogs are worth thousands. They go through years of specialized training. No way one ends up at a dollar auction by accident. Tobin remembered something. The black jacket. When that guy walked past, she focused on the jacket, not him, like it meant something bad. FEMA handlers wear black tactical gear, Zed said thoughtfully. If something traumatic happened during her service. He pulled out his phone and started searching. After a few minutes, his face darkened. Here we go. 2 years ago, FEMA disbanded several K-9 units due to budget cuts. Dogs were supposed to be retired to handlers or placed through official channels. Supposed to be? Marla asked. Some units reported dogs rehomed through private contractors. Zed's voice was grim, including a female shepherd matching Fritzi's description and chip number. To Culpepper? Tobin guessed. Can't prove it yet, but think about it. Trained working dogs, already proven reliable. Instead of letting them retire, someone's rooting them into guard work. Zed shook his head. It's cruel. These dogs are conditioned for detection and rescue, trying to retrain them for attack work. It goes against everything they know. Marla started pacing. That's why she won't bite, isn't it? Even when threatened. Exactly. Zed gestured to Fritzi's alert posture. Look at her body language. Head up, ears forward. She's scanning for things to investigate, not threats to engage. Classic search and rescue behavior. Tobin remembered the auction. When that man charged at her, she barked but backed away. Because she's not aggressive by nature, Zed explained. These dogs are taught to alert and contain, never to attack. Someone trying to force her into guard work. It would be like trying to turn a doctor into a soldier. And when it didn't work, they dumped her at auction, Marla concluded angrily. Probably not the first time, Zed said. Think about Culpepper's business model. Buy trained dogs cheap, minimal retraining, sell them as guard dogs at a premium. When they fail, because they're not bred or trained for that work, he can blame the dog's aggression and start over. Tobin felt sick. How many other dogs like Fritzi? Too many, Zed said quietly. But now we have proof of at least one case. That chip is registered. There's a paper trail. Marla pulled out her notebook, where she'd recorded the witness statements from yesterday. So we have a hero dog, trained by FEMA, saving a child exactly the way she was taught. And we have Culpepper trying to destroy her for doing her job. While he profits from misusing other dogs like her, Tobin added bitterly. Zed stood up. I'm going to make some calls. I still have contacts in service dog circles. Maybe we can track down her original unit, find out what really happened. Fritzi padded over to Tobin, resting her head on his knee. He scratched behind her ears, thinking about everything she'd been through. You never forgot your real job, did you, girl? Even when they tried to make you something else? We need to be careful, Marla warned. If Culpepper's running a scheme this big, we'll be smart about it, Zed assured her. Document everything. Build the evidence. There are people who'll want to know about this, Animal welfare groups, FEMA oversight, maybe even fraud investigators. Tobin hugged Fritzy's neck. Hear that, girl? We're going to tell your real story. Show everyone who you really are. They spent the next few hours compiling everything they knew. Zed printed out Fritzy's chip registration and service history. Marla organized the witness statements from the rescue, adding photos of Fritzy's injuries from the vet visit. Tobin contributed his notebook of commands and behaviors he'd observed. See this? Zed pointed to a series of German phrases in Tobin's notes. Standard FEMA search commands. She's still responding perfectly to her original training. Could we prove she was never actually part of Culpepper's program? Marla asked. Better than that, Zed replied. We can prove she's specifically trained not to do what he claims she was trained for. Watch this. He set up a simple demonstration, using a padded sleeve like those used in protection training. When he acted threatening, Fritzy positioned herself between him and Tobin, but made no move to bite, even when the sleeve was offered. Attack-trained dogs would engage, Zed explained. She's doing exactly what search and rescue dogs do, controlling the situation without aggression. You couldn't train this out of her if you tried. It's too deeply ingrained. So every time Culpepper calls her dangerous, Tobin began. He's lying, Marla finished. And probably lying about other dogs, too. Zed packed up his equipment. I'll start making those calls. We need to find out what happened to the rest of her unit. Something tells me Fritzy's not the only one who needs justice. As he left, Tobin sat with Fritzy in the backyard, watching her practice her search patterns. Head high, nose working, movements precise and purposeful. Not a guard dog, not a threat. A hero doing exactly what she was born and trained to do. Good girl, he whispered, and her tail wagged once, confident and sure. Whatever came next, they had the truth on their side now. Fritzy's real story was finally coming to light. The shelter tech's hands shook as she passed Marla a thick manila folder. I've been keeping track, she whispered, glancing around the empty break room. The intake papers never match what actually comes through. Dogs with training certificates somehow lose their paperwork before leaving. Sarah Chen had worked at the county shelter for 3 years. She'd reached out after seeing Fritzy's video online, recognizing the pattern. How many cases? Marla asked, thumbing through the documentation. At least 15 in the past year. All working dogs, police K9s that failed certification, military dogs too unstable for service. But their original papers tell a different story. Sarah's voice hardened. They come in healthy, trained, leave broken or disappeared entirely. Marla copied the records carefully while Sarah kept watch. Names, dates, discrepancies highlighted in yellow. A paper trail of vanished dogs. Across town, Zed met with Marcus Webb, a night guard who'd quit Culpepper's warehouse operation 2 months ago. They sat in Zed's truck, engine running to mask their conversation. Drive whipping, Marcus explained, his face tight. They'd use these flexible whips to get the dogs worked up, then reward the aggression. Some wouldn't turn mean no matter what they did. Those ones... He trailed off. Disappeared? Zed prompted. Marcus nodded. Or showed up at auction tagged as dangerous. Your shepherd, I remember her. 3 days of trying to break her. She wouldn't bite, just kept trying to search the building instead. Made the trainer look bad. Zed's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. We need this on record. I'll write it all down, Marcus promised. Times, dates, methods. Been keeping notes since I quit, just... He glanced around nervously. Keep my name quiet long as you can. Meanwhile, Tobin and Fritzy worked in the fenced practice yard behind Zed's house. The afternoon sun caught Fritzy's coat as she executed perfect figure eights around Tobin, responding to the slightest hand signal. Beautiful, Zed murmured, adjusting his camera. Now the approach drill. A stranger, actually Zed's nephew Mike, walked aggressively toward Tobin. Fritzi immediately positioned herself between them, alert but calm. No growling, no lunging, just controlled, professional presence. Again, Zed called. Different angle. They ran the drill 6 more times. Each approach, Fritzi demonstrated textbook protection behavior. No aggression, pure control and containment. The footage was undeniable. One more, Zed said. Show her search pattern. Tobin directed Fritzi through a series of commands. She quartered the yard methodically, nose working, body language focused and precise. Every movement showed her true training, not a guard dog, but a professional searcher. The video went up that evening. By morning, it had thousands of views. Local comments poured in. That's the dangerous dog? Looks better trained than most pets? My kid was there when she saved Tommy. Never even growled. Something's not right about those accusations. The tide of public opinion began to shift. People started questioning the official story. Neighbors who'd avoided Tobin's yard now stopped to watch Fritzi work, admiring her discipline. But Culpepper didn't stay quiet long. The legal notice arrived 3 days later, thick with allegations of defamation and demands to cease and desist. He's running scared, Zed said, reviewing the paperwork. Notice how there's no actual proof of ownership, just threats. Marla spread their growing evidence across the kitchen table. Sarah's shelter records, Marcus's testimony, training logs, vet reports, witness statements from the rescue. We've got proof. He's got bluster. That afternoon, the health inspector showed up for a routine check. The property inspector followed the next day. Both found nothing wrong, but the message was clear. Pressure was mounting. Tobin kept working with Fritzi, documenting every session. Her calm confidence spoke louder than rumors. People began stopping by to watch them train, seeing the truth with their own eyes. Good girl, Tobin praised as Fritzi completed another perfect drill. She sat beside him, alert and dignified, everything about her radiating competence and control. The camera captured it all. Proof against lies, truth against rumors. In the growing folder of evidence, a story emerged. Not of a dangerous dog, but of a system that turned heroes into victims. With each new ally, each piece of documentation, the picture became clearer. The public showdown was coming, but now they had more than accusations, they had proof. The team worked methodically, building their case. Marla organized incoming evidence with legal precision. Zed continued filming training sessions, showing Fritzi's consistent discipline. Tobin kept detailed logs of every command, every response, every milestone of trust rebuilt. Their small group of allies grew. A former K-9 handler confirmed Fritzi's search patterns matched federal training standards. A vet tech recognized equipment marks that didn't match Culpepper's timeline. Each person added another piece to the puzzle, another voice against the lies. The videos spread further online. People began sharing their own stories of questionable dealings with Culpepper's operation. The whispers grew louder, harder to dismiss. Local news outlets started asking questions. Through it all, Fritzi remained steady, executing her duties with quiet precision, proving her true nature with every controlled response. She was their best evidence, living proof of the difference between what she was claimed to be and what she truly was. The tension built, but they were ready. Their evidence was organized, their allies prepared, their documentation thorough. Whatever came next, the truth would have its day. Marcus brought more witnesses from the warehouse. Sarah compiled adoption records showing suspicious patterns. The vet provided detailed reports contrasting Fritzi's training markers with Culpepper's claims. Step by step, they built their case. The videos continued to gain traction. Each new clip showed Fritzy's discipline, her gentle competence with children, her perfect response to commands. The contrast with Culpepper's accusations became impossible to ignore. Local sentiment shifted further. Where once people crossed the street to avoid them, now they stopped to watch Fritzy work. Children asked to pet her while parents looked on approvingly. The truth was winning, one heart at a time. Even as pressure mounted, more inspections, more legal threats, more whispered warnings, their evidence grew stronger. They had proof now, real proof, and allies ready to stand with them. The team kept working, kept documenting, kept building their case. The showdown was coming, but they would meet it with truth on their side. The morning dawned crisp and clear as Culpepper's announcement spread through town like wildfire. Posted on telephone poles and store windows, bright orange flyers proclaimed, "Public safety demonstration. Witness the truth about dangerous dogs. Today at 2 o'clock. Finch Creek Sawmill." Tobin's stomach churned as he read the words. The old sawmill loomed at the edge of town, its weathered buildings and rusted equipment standing like ancient guardians against the autumn sky. Deputy Klein had posted officers at the entrance, checking IDs and having people sign liability waivers. "Limited attendance only," the deputy announced, his voice carrying a note of strain. "For your safety, please stay behind the marked barriers at all times." Zed helped Tobin secure Fritzy's special training harness, professional-grade equipment that spoke of serious work, not aggression control. The muzzle was Marla's idea, not because Fritzy needed it, but to show they took public safety seriously. "Ready, boy?" Zed squeezed Tobin's shoulder, his weathered face set with determination. Tobin nodded, clutching the leather leash. Fritzy sat calmly beside him, her posture perfect despite the growing crowd. Marla followed close behind, carrying a thick folder of documents, proof they'd carefully gathered over weeks. The sawmill's interior was a maze of catwalks and old machinery. Sunlight streamed through dusty windows, casting long shadows across the wooden floors. Local folks mingled with a handful of tourists who'd heard about the demonstration. Camera phones pointed their way as they entered. Culpepper stood on a raised platform, looking more like a ringmaster than a businessman in his expensive jacket. His handlers, men in matching black uniforms, spread through the crowd, positioning themselves strategically. "We're here today," Culpepper's voice boomed, "to demonstrate the unpredictable nature of certain animals that pose a risk to our community." Tobin felt Fritzy tense beside him. But her attention wasn't on Culpepper or his men. Her head kept turning toward the support beams, the old conveyor belts, the structural joints where steel met wood. Her nose worked constantly, sampling the air with professional interest. The first incident came quickly. One of Culpepper's men stumbled near them, dropping a metal tool with a loud clang. The crowd gasped, but Fritzy merely glanced at the sound before returning to her careful scanning of the building. "Notice the aggressive stance," Culpepper called out. But those close enough could see the truth. Fritzy's posture remained calm, controlled, focused on something else entirely. Another handler approached quickly from behind, his footsteps heavy on the wooden planks. Fritzy shifted position smoothly, maintaining sight lines without showing any aggression. More cameras recorded the moment, but not the reaction Culpepper had hoped for. "She's not even looking at them," someone in the crowd muttered. "Some attack dog." Marla moved through the observers, quietly sharing copies of their documentation. The microchip data showed Fritzy's FEMA certification. The intake notes revealed irregularities in Culpepper's claims. People began to whisper, comparing the evidence to the scene before them. A third handler made his move, rushing past with a threatening gesture. Fritzy remained focused on her systematic survey of the building's bones. Her behavior was becoming impossible to ignore. This wasn't a guard dog being restrained. This was a search and rescue professional trying to work. The tension in the air shifted. More phones turned toward Culpepper's men than toward Fritzy. The narrative he'd tried to create was unraveling with each failed provocation. That's when they all heard it. A faint, rhythmic tone from somewhere in the building's old warning system. Most of the crowd didn't seem to notice, but Fritzy's entire demeanor changed. Her posture sharpened, her focus intensified. She wasn't reacting to threats. She was responding to her training. Tobin felt the change through the leash. This was the Fritzy he'd come to know. Not a broken attack dog, but a highly trained professional with a specific purpose. The crowd was beginning to see it, too, as she ignored each new attempt to provoke her in favor of her methodical structural assessment. Culpepper's face darkened as his demonstration backfired. His handlers grew more aggressive in their attempts to prove his point, but each failure only made Fritzy's true nature more apparent. The contrast between their chaos and her discipline told its own story. Tourists on the upper catwalks peered down with interest, recording everything on their phones. Local residents who'd come expecting to see a dangerous animal instead watched a masterclass in professional restraint. The narrative was shifting before their eyes. "The dog clearly shows aggressive tendencies," Culpepper insisted, but his voice had lost its theatrical confidence. The evidence in people's hands told a different story. The scene before them showed something else entirely. The alarm tone continued its soft pulse, barely audible above the murmur of the crowd. But Fritzy's attention remained locked on the building itself, her behavior becoming more purposeful with each passing moment. She was trying to tell them something, but not what Culpepper had planned. Deputy Klein watched from his position near the entrance, his expression troubled as he compared the scene to the warnings he'd been given. The gap between Culpepper's claims and reality was becoming impossible to ignore. Zed stayed close to Tobin, his military experience reading the situation with growing concern. Not because of Fritzy, her behavior was exemplary, but the old medic's instincts were picking up on something else, something that aligned with Fritzy's persistent focus on the building's structure. The demonstration had become something entirely different from what Culpepper intended. Instead of proving danger, it was revealing truth. Instead of showing aggression, it was displaying discipline. And through it all, that faint alarm tone continued its quiet warning, noticed only by those trained to hear it. Marla's documentation made its way through the crowd, each page adding weight to what people were witnessing. The gap between Culpepper's accusations and the reality before them grew wider with each passing minute. His safety demonstration had become a public vindication of everything Tobin and his allies had been saying. The tension in the air remained, but its nature had changed. The focus shifted from fear of the dog to questions about the man who'd arranged this spectacle. As Fritzy continued her professional assessment of the building, ignoring every attempt to provoke her, the true story wrote itself in the minds of those watching. The siren's pitch grew stronger, its eerie tone echoing through the old sawmill's weathered beams. Fritzy's ears pricked forward, her whole body tensing with purpose. She turned sharply toward one of the main support beams, pulling against the leash with careful insistence. "Easy, girl," Tobin murmured, but there was something different in her behavior now. This wasn't fear or aggression. This was work. Fritzy planted her feet and began barking in a measured, deliberate pattern. 3 sharp barks, pause. 3 more, pause. Her eyes never left the beam, her body language screaming urgency rather than threat. Zed moved closer, his weathered face creasing with sudden understanding. "Hold on," he said quietly, watching Fritzy's precise signaling. "I've seen this before." The crowd had drawn back, muttering about the dog acting up. But Zed stepped forward with purpose. His limp was more pronounced as he hurried to Tobin's side, his expression intense. "She's not being aggressive," he explained, loud enough for those nearby to hear. "This is collapse detection behavior. Some canines are specially trained to alert to structural stress. They can sense vibrations and changes we can't detect." Tobin's eyes widened as pieces started falling into place. "That's why she keeps focusing on the building instead of the people?" "Exactly." Zed nodded, watching Fritzi maintain her disciplined alert pattern. "She's not reacting randomly. She's doing her job." The revelation hit Tobin like a thunderbolt. "The black jacket," he breathed. "Everyone thought she was aggressive toward people wearing black jackets, but it's not about the color or the person," Zed finished. "Those jackets are standard issue for many K9 handlers. Something happened, probably a collapse where she lost her handler. Now she associates that uniform with structural failure." Fritzi's barking continued its measured rhythm, her whole bearing that of a professional trying desperately to communicate. The crowd's whispers took on a different tone as they watched her disciplined performance. "Look at how controlled those barks are," someone said. "That's not a dog losing it." 3-bark pattern, Zed explained to those within earshot. "It's a trained alert sequence. She's trying to warn us." Across the floor, Culpepper's smirk grew wider. To him, the optics were perfect. A dog barking in public, seeming agitated. He couldn't see what Zed and Tobin now understood with crystal clarity. "You see?" Culpepper called out. "Unstable, dangerous, just like I said." But his words weren't landing quite the way he'd hoped. More and more people were noticing the precision in Fritzi's behavior, the way she remained focused on the beam rather than any person. "She's not unstable," Tobin said, his voice carrying with newfound confidence. "She's specialized. This isn't aggression. It's training." The revelation rippled through the crowd. Phones captured Fritzi's continued alerting, her disciplined focus unmistakable now that people knew what they were seeing. "That's why she pushed that kid clear of the truck," someone realized aloud. "She's not trained to attack. She's trained to save lives." Zed moved. Closer to the beam Fritzi was alerting on, his military experience evident in his careful assessment. "These old mills can develop structural issues. Vibrations from machinery, age, weather damage." He looked at Fritzi with profound respect. "She's probably picking up something we can't even detect yet." The crowd's mood shifted further. What had started as a demonstration of supposed danger had become a revelation of specialized skill. People began backing away from the beam, taking Fritzi's warning seriously. Culpepper's handlers looked uncertain now, their provocative moves forgotten as they watched the scene unfold. The narrative they'd been hired to support was crumbling in the face of Fritzi's obvious expertise. "She's not broken," Tobin said, his voice thick with emotion. "She's just been carrying this burden alone, trying to warn people, trying to prevent another tragedy." Fritzi maintained her alert, unwavering in her duty despite the crowd, despite the handlers, despite everything. Her past wasn't a story of aggression, but of dedication. Not of danger, but of devotion. The black jacket that had seemed to trigger such strong reactions now stood revealed for what it truly represented. Not a target of aggression, but a reminder of loss. Each time she'd reacted, she'd been trying to prevent history from repeating itself. The siren's tone continued its haunting rhythm, harmonizing with Fritzi's alert pattern. The crowd had completely transformed from wary observers to respectful witnesses of a professional at work. Culpepper's smirk began to fade as he realized his demonstration was having exactly the opposite effect he'd intended. Instead of proving Fritzi dangerous, he'd helped reveal her true purpose. And in doing so, raised serious questions about how such a highly trained specialist had ended up in his kennels. Tobin knelt beside his dog, seeing her now with complete understanding. Every reaction, every focused moment, every instance of supposed aggression, all of it had been the actions of a dedicated professional trying to protect people from dangers they couldn't see. The trauma wasn't what had broken her. The trauma was what she was trained to prevent in others. The black jacket wasn't what set her off. The black jacket was a warning sign she couldn't ignore. Fritzi kept her alert pose, her barking pattern unchanging. She wasn't a liability to be destroyed. She was a guardian being true to her training, even when no one understood what she was trying to tell them. The revelation hung in the air, as clear as Fritzi's warning barks. This wasn't a story of rehabilitation. It was a story of recognition. They hadn't fixed a broken dog. They'd finally understood what she'd been trying to tell them all along. The late afternoon sky darkened without warning. Thunder rolled across the valley, and the first fat drops of rain began to fall through the sawmill's partially open roof. The ancient metal groaned under the sudden temperature change, a sound that made Fritzi's ears prick forward. A brilliant flash of lightning split the sky, followed instantly by a deafening crack. The strike found the mill's highest point, sending a surge of electricity through the metal framework. The catwalk, already stressed and rusted, shuddered violently. "Everyone out!" Zed's command cut through the rumble of thunder. "Now!" But it was too late. With a screech of tortured metal, a section of the catwalk buckled. People screamed as the walkway twisted, trapping several tourists near the far end. Among them was a young woman in a plain blue jacket, Lyndon Culpepper, her face white with terror as she clung to the warped railing. "Lyndon." Culpepper's usual smooth demeanor cracked. For the first time, real fear showed in his eyes. Tobin's heart pounded, but his mind was clear. He spotted a coil of rope near the maintenance access and grabbed it. His fingers moved quickly, tying the knots Zed had taught him during their training sessions with Fritzi. "Tobin, no!" Marla's voice carried over the chaos. "Mom, I have to." He met her eyes. "Fritzi knows what to do. She's been trying to tell us this whole time." Zed limped forward, his military training evident in his quick assessment. "Secure that end to the main joist," he ordered, taking charge. "I'll anchor you here." His strong hands checked Tobin's knots, then braced against the support beam. Fritzi's bark changed, taking on the rhythmic pattern they now recognized as her search cadence. Her nose worked the air, and her body language shifted to full working mode. This wasn't practice anymore. This was what she was trained for. The catwalk groaned again. Lyndon screamed as another section dropped several inches. "Clear the building!" Marla's voice rang with authority as she herded people toward the exits. "Everyone out except rescue personnel!" Deputy Klein stood frozen, his training warring with his instinct to look to Culpepper for direction. "Sir, should we?" But Culpepper was already backing towards the door, his phone out. "We need to document this. The liability." His words were drowned out by another crash of thunder. Tobin checked his rope one last time and looked at Fritzi. "Find them, girl. Show me the way." Fritzi moved forward, her nose working the air currents, her paws testing each surface before committing her weight. Her barking maintained its precise rhythm. 3 sharp barks. Pause. 3 again. The pattern that once seemed aggressive now clearly communicated vital information about structural stability. The planks shifted under Tobin's feet as he followed Fritzi's lead. He stayed low, spreading his weight as she showed him, trusting her completely. Rain dripped through the roof, making the metal slick, but Fritzi's guidance never wavered. "Stay back," he called to Lyndon, who was trying to crawl toward safety. "Let us come to you." Another section of catwalk dropped, sending vibrations through the entire structure. Fritzy's barking intensified, and she changed direction, leading Tobin along a different path. He understood now. She wasn't just finding the quickest route, she was finding the safest one. "The whole thing's going to go," someone shouted from below. Marla's voice cut through the panic. "Everyone out! Let them work!" She was directing traffic at the doors, her face tight with worry, but her actions precise and helpful. Zed maintained his position at the anchor point, his military experience evident in his steady presence. "Keep your weight distributed, Tobin. Follow her signals." The rain fell harder now, drumming on the metal roof. Lightning flashed again, illuminating the scene in stark bursts. Linden huddled against the railing, trapped between sections of twisted metal. Two other tourists crouched nearby, an elderly couple too frightened to move. Fritzy's barking suddenly changed pitch. A warning. Tobin froze instantly, trusting her completely. A second later, the section he'd been about to step on groaned and sagged. "Good girl," he whispered, his heart pounding. "Show me another way." She did, moving laterally across the catwalk, testing each step. Her training was fully evident now. This wasn't just about finding people, but about finding a safe path to reach them. Deputy Klein finally found his voice. "Culpepper, these are your responsibility. You need to—" But when he turned, Culpepper was already by the door, still filming rather than helping. The elderly couple was closest. Following Fritzy's guidance, Tobin reached them first. "Hold on to my shoulder," he instructed, helping them to their feet one at a time. "Step exactly where I step." Fritzy led them back along the safe path she'd found, her barking steady and reassuring. When they reached the stable section, Zed and several others helped them down. But getting to Linden would be harder. The catwalk had twisted further, and she was now trapped behind a section of collapsed railing. The metal screamed with every movement, and the wind drove the rain sideways through the broken roof panels. Fritzy's barking took on a new urgency. She understood the deteriorating situation better than any of them, her specialized training reading the subtle signs of imminent collapse. "We have to hurry," Tobin called down to Zed. "How much rope do we have left?" "Enough," Zed called back. "But make it count." Tobin edged forward, following Fritzy's lead. The German Shepherd moved with absolute certainty, her body language communicating clearly which sections could bear weight and which would fail. "Linden," Tobin called out. "When I reach you, you'll need to move fast. Watch Fritzy. She'll show us the way back." Linden nodded, her eyes fixed on the dog. Perhaps for the first time, she was seeing Fritzy as she truly was. Not a broken asset to be disposed of, but a highly trained professional doing exactly what she was meant to do. The final approach was the most treacherous. The catwalk swayed with each step, and the metal made horrible groaning sounds that seemed to come from deep within the structure. But Fritzy never hesitated, her focus absolute as she guided Tobin to Linden's position. Below, the last of the spectators had finally cleared out, leaving only Zed, Marla, Deputy Klein, and Culpepper, the latter still filming from what he thought was a safe distance. The contrast between those actively helping and those merely documenting couldn't have been clearer. Another flash of lightning illuminated the scene as Tobin reached Linden. The catwalk shuddered ominously, and Fritzy's barking took on its most urgent tone yet. Tobin finally reached Linden, his breath coming in short gasps from the effort. The twisted metal of the catwalk had trapped her left leg beneath a fallen support brace. Rain streamed down her face as she looked up at him, her eyes wide with fear but also relief. "I can't get it loose," she said, tugging helplessly at her pinned leg. "It's too heavy." Fritzy circled them carefully, her barking pattern shifting to shorter, sharper bursts. She was marking safe zones, showing them where the structure could still hold weight. Tobin noticed how she deliberately avoided certain sections of the catwalk, understanding now that she was reading the stability of the metal beneath them. "Hold still," Tobin instructed, examining how the brace had fallen. "We need to do this smart." He pulled the rope from his shoulder, thankful for Zed's insistence on bringing proper climbing gear. The old metal groaned beneath them, punctuating the urgency of their situation. "Zed!" he called down. "I need to stabilize this section before we try to lift." From below, Zed's steady voice carried up through the rain. "Use the figure-8 knot I showed you. Anchor to the main support beam." Tobin's hands moved quickly, remembering the knots Zed had taught him during their training sessions with Fritzi. The rope felt rough and reassuring in his hands as he worked, following Fritzi's cues about where to secure the lines. Each time he considered a spot, he watched her reaction. If she barked that special alert pattern, he chose another location. "Smart boy," Zed called up, watching Tobin's methodical progress. "Now brace it like we discussed." The rain made everything slick, but Tobin managed to create a stable triangle of rope supports around their position. Fritzi continued her patrol, moving in precise patterns that spoke of years of professional training. Her focus never wavered, even as another rumble of thunder shook the building. "Okay, Linden," Tobin said, wiping rain from his eyes. "When we lift this brace, you need to pull your leg out fast. Don't try to stand up right away. Just roll clear. Got it?" Linden nodded, her face pale but determined. "I understand." Zed had made his way up to their level, moving carefully along the path Fritzi had shown was stable. His military experience showed in his efficient movements and calm demeanor. Together they positioned themselves on either side of the fallen brace. "On 3, Zed said, getting a solid grip. 1, 2, 3. They lifted together, muscles straining against the weight of the twisted metal. For a terrifying moment, nothing happened. Then the brace shifted slightly, and Linden yanked her leg free, rolling away just as Fritzi had indicated. The moment of victory was palpable. Below, the small crowd that remained let out a collective breath. Marla's face showed fierce pride in her son, while Deputy Klein stood with his hand on his radio, looking both relieved and confused about what to do next. "Let's get you secured," Tobin said, reaching for the rope to create a safety harness for Linden. His hands moved surely, creating the knots that would keep her safe during their retreat. Fritzi continued her alert pattern, but something in her posture had changed. Her ears flicked back and forth, catching sounds that human ears couldn't detect. The dog's attention kept returning to the deeper structure of the building, her barking taking on a more urgent tone. Tobin had learned to trust those warnings. They meant something was very wrong. Before he could voice his concern, heavy footsteps pounded up the nearest stable stairway. Vance Culpepper burst onto their level, his face flushed with rage and what might have been fear. He still clutched his phone, as if documenting the scene was more important than helping his daughter. "This is exactly what I warned everyone about," he shouted, gesturing wildly at Fritzi. "That dog is causing panic. She's making the situation worse." Fritzi's posture remained professional, her attention divided between her ongoing structural assessment and the new threat Culpepper presented. She didn't growl or show aggression. She simply continued her trained alerts, proving with every movement that she was no attack dog. "Deputy Klein," Culpepper called down. "We need to tranquilize that animal before she causes more damage. Get the animal control team up here now." Deputy Klein shifted uncomfortably below, looking between Culpepper and the scene before him. The evidence was difficult to ignore. Fritzi had just helped save 2 elderly tourists and Culpepper's own daughter, all while maintaining perfect discipline and focus. "Sir," Klein called back, his voice uncertain. "The dog appears to be performing some kind of emergency service function. Maybe we should—" "That's my property," Culpepper cut him off. And I'm telling you she's dangerous. Look at how she's agitating everyone." But Fritzy's behavior told a different story. She continued her methodical assessment, ignoring Culpepper completely, except when his movements brought him too close to unstable sections. Then she would bark her warning pattern, trying to keep even him safe despite his threats. Lyndon, now secured in the safety harness, spoke up. "Dad, stop. She's not dangerous. She's trying to help. She's been showing them where it's safe to walk this whole time." The girl's voice carried a weight of truth that seemed to make Deputy Klein pause again. He looked up at the scene with new eyes, finally seeing what had been there all along, a highly trained search and rescue dog doing exactly what she was supposed to do. Tobin kept his focus on preparing their exit route, but he could feel the tension in the air. Everything they'd discovered about Fritzy's past, every piece of evidence about her true training and purpose, was playing out in real time for everyone to see. The contract security dog narrative that Culpepper had tried to push was crumbling with every professional alert Fritzy gave. "Stay behind me," Tobin told Lyndon, keeping one hand on the guide rope. "Step only where Fritzy shows us it's safe." He could feel the catwalk's subtle movements beneath them, understanding now why Fritzy's alerts were becoming more urgent. Something in the building's structure was still deteriorating, despite their apparent success in freeing Lyndon. Culpepper's face had turned an even darker shade of red. "This is ridiculous! Klein, I'm ordering you to—" But Deputy Klein had finally found his backbone. "Mr. Culpepper, sir, I'm not doing anything to interfere with an ongoing rescue operation. That dog is clearly performing her duties as a trained emergency service animal." The deputy's words hung in the air, heavy with implications. Every moment that passed showed more clearly the gulf between what Culpepper had claimed Fritzy was and what she actually was, a highly skilled professional whose training he had tried to corrupt for profit. Through the tense standoff, movement flickered at the edge of Tobin's vision. One of Culpepper's handlers had circled behind them, raising what looked like a bulky pistol. Tobin's heart lurched as he recognized the dart gun's distinctive shape. Zed moved with surprising speed for a man with a limp. He positioned himself between Fritzy and the handler, his voice carrying the authority of his military years. "Lower that weapon. You fire a tranquilizer at a working rescue dog during an active emergency, and you're looking at criminal liability." The handler hesitated, dart gun wavering. Above them, something deep in the mill's structure groaned, a sound like metal giving up its last hold on stability. Before anyone could react, the ancient conveyor system that hung above them snapped free with a thunderous crack. A cascade of rusted metal and splintered wood rained down. The platform beneath Tobin's feet shuddered and tore away. His stomach lurched as he dropped, the safety rope catching him with a jolt that knocked the breath from his lungs. Lyndon screamed beside him as they swung in empty space. Thick dust billowed through the mill, turning everything into shifting gray shadows. Tobin could barely see his own hands on the rope. His muscles burned as he tried to stabilize their swing, but the rope itself was sawing against something sharp. Through the chaos, he heard Fritzy's claws scrambling on metal. She ignored the shouts from below, Culpepper yelling commands, Zed calling warnings, his mother's frightened voice. The German Shepherd launched herself through the dust cloud toward a massive support beam that was slowly tipping toward the joist where their rope was anchored. "Fritzy, no!" Tobin cried, understanding her intent. The beam would slice through their lifeline if it fell. But Fritzy was already in position. She wedged her body beneath the slumping beam, her powerful shoulders braced against the crushing weight. Her legs trembled with the effort, but she held firm. This was what she had been trained for, to hold position until victims could be rescued, no matter the personal cost. Zed's voice cut through the settling dust. "Hold on, kids, I'm coming!" The retired medic crawled along what remained of the catwalk, using Fritzy's body as a guide. Every few feet, he tested the stability before moving forward. Below, Marla took charge of the panicked crowd. "Everyone back! Move toward the main doors! Calmly! Deputy Klein, get these people clear of the collapse zone!" Tobin's arms shook from the strain of holding both his and Lyndon's weight. The rope creaked ominously where it crossed the joist, but Fritzy didn't budge. Her eyes locked with Tobin's through the swirling dust, filled with absolute focus and determination. The same look she'd had when saving the toddler from the truck. The look of a professional doing exactly what she was trained to do. Zed reached them, his movements careful but sure. "Hand over hand now," he instructed, helping guide them toward stable flooring. "Easy does it. Fritzy's got us covered." The German Shepherd's body quivered with effort, but she maintained her position. The beam she supported would have crashed through their rescue line in seconds without her intervention. Instead, she created the precious minutes they needed for Zed to pull them to safety. Tobin's feet finally touched solid ground. He helped Lyndon steady herself, then turned back toward Fritzy. The dog's eyes never left his face, even as her muscles trembled under the crushing weight above her. She was waiting for permission to move, just as she had been trained to do in collapsed buildings, where one wrong shift could bring everything down. "Fritzy," Tobin called softly, using the release command Zed had taught him. "You can come now. Come." The dog held her position for one more heartbeat, making sure they were truly secure. Then she eased herself free with careful precision, letting the beam settle slowly instead of crashing down. Even exhausted, she maintained her training, no sudden movements that could trigger further collapse. The dust began to settle, revealing the full scope of what had just happened. The conveyor's fall had taken out a significant portion of the upper catwalks. Without Fritzy's quick action and trained response, Tobin and Lyndon would have fallen. With it. Instead, they stood safely on stable ground, thanks to a dog that Culpepper had labeled as nothing but a dangerous liability. The dust settled into an eerie quiet, broken only by the distant creak of metal and the sound of ragged breathing. Shafts of late afternoon light cut through the haze, illuminating swirling particles like falling snow. In this strange twilight, Lyndon Culpepper stumbled forward, her face streaked with tears and grime. "You have to tell them, Dad," she choked out, her voice raw. "You have to tell them what we did to those dogs." Vance Culpepper's face drained of color. "Lyndon, be quiet. You don't know what you're saying." "I do know," her words echoed through the damaged mill. "I worked in the kennels last summer, remember? I saw everything. The bite enhancement drills, the way you'd shock them until they got aggressive." Her hands trembled as she turned to face the crowd. "The good ones. The ones that wouldn't bite no matter what. He marked them as broken and sent them away." Deputy Klein stepped forward, his crisp uniform now coated in dust. "Mr. Culpepper, is this true?" "She's confused," Culpepper snapped. "Upset from the accident. You can't take the word of a hysterical teenager." "I kept records," Lyndon pressed on, her voice growing stronger. "Dates, dog tags, training logs. You falsified their evaluations, changed their histories, made gentle dogs look dangerous so you could get rid of them." Across the mill floor, Tobin knelt beside Fritzy. The German Shepherd had finally given in to exhaustion, lying on her side with her tongue lolling out. But her breathing was steady, and her eyes remained alert, tracking everything around her. Tobin cradled her head in his lap, fingers gently checking for injuries. Zed moved through the crowd with practiced efficiency, examining cuts and scrapes. His old medic's training took over as he directed people to sit, breathe, stay calm. Marla worked alongside him, distributing water bottles and helping dust-covered witnesses to their feet. "Look at what just happened here," Lyndon continued, gesturing toward Fritzy. "That's what these dogs were really trained for, to save lives, not attack people. But you couldn't make money off rescue dogs, could you, Dad? Not like you could with guard dogs." The crowd's murmuring grew louder. People who had come expecting to see a dangerous animal put down were instead processing what they'd witnessed, a highly trained rescue dog holding up a steel beam to save 2 teenagers. "I've got documentation," Zed called out, pulling papers from his jacket. "Fritzy's original FEMA certification, proof of her search and rescue training. This dog wasn't bred for aggression. She was specifically selected for her gentle temperament and protective instincts." Deputy Klein's posture shifted subtly, his hand dropping away from his weapon. The lines around his eyes deepened as he looked between Culpepper and his daughter. "Enough of this." "Nonsense!" Culpepper barked, his face flushed red. "Klein, that dog is a public menace. Seize it now." But something had changed in the deputy's stance. The automatic deference was gone from his expression, replaced by a hard, considering look. "Actually, sir," Klein said slowly, "I think we need to discuss those training records Lyndon mentioned, and the falsified evaluations. That's fraud, Mr. Culpepper. Federal fraud, if we're talking about repurposed FEMA assets." Tobin hugged Fritzy closer, feeling her solid warmth against him. She had proven herself more thoroughly than any demonstration could have managed. The crowd that had gathered to judge her now pressed forward protectively, forming a barrier between the exhausted shepherd and the man who had tried to destroy her. "You can't seriously believe," Culpepper started, but his voice cracked as he saw the faces around him. The fear and suspicion he had carefully cultivated had evaporated, replaced by something harder to fight. The truth, witnessed firsthand. Marla stepped forward, her phone held up. "I recorded everything," she said quietly. "The rescue, Lyndon's statement, all of it. I think it's time everyone saw what really happened here today." The mill creaked above them, a reminder of how close they'd come to tragedy. But in the aftermath of disaster, something else had collapsed as well. The careful framework of lies that had nearly condemned an innocent dog to death. The days following the mill incident buzzed with focused energy. In Zed's small living room, papers and folders covered every surface as the team worked to build their case. Marla sat cross-legged on the floor, carefully organizing a stack of shelter intake records. The shelter tech had slipped them to her after hours, his hands shaking as he handed over evidence of doctored evaluations. "Look at this," she said, holding up 2 forms. "Same dog, different temperament scores. They changed everything about these animals' histories." At the kitchen table, Zed pored over printouts of FEMA certification records tied to Fritzy's microchip. His weathered fingers traced each line carefully. "Got the whole timeline here," he announced. "Fritzy's training, her deployments, her unit's disbandment. Even got signatures from her original handlers." Lyndon arrived with a heavy backpack, her face pale but determined. She pulled out USB drives and folders stuffed with internal documents. "Training videos," she explained, spreading them across the table. "Shows everything. The drive whipping, the shock collars, how they'd push good dogs until they either snapped or broke." Her voice cracked. "And here's all the falsified assessment papers. Dad's signature on everyone." Tobin sat on the couch with Fritzy at his feet, organizing his training notebook. The pages were filled with detailed observations, commands Fritzy responded to, and notes about her behavior. Next to him, his laptop showed the viral video of their protection drills, proof of Fritzy's true nature and training. Deputy Klein arrived in civilian clothes, looking uncomfortable but resolute. "Got us a hearing date," he said quietly. "Judge Thompson, next Tuesday. I'll personally deliver all the evidence through official channels." They worked through the afternoon, building their case piece by piece. The goal was simple but powerful: prove Fritzy's original mission training and expose the deliberate abuse, fraud, and unsafe practices that had nearly destroyed her. More importantly, they aimed to shut down the system that had harmed countless other dogs like her. The courthouse buzzed with tension as Judge Thompson called the hearing to order. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, casting long shadows across the wooden benches packed with spectators. Tobin sat in the front row between his mother and Zed, Fritzy lying calmly at his feet. Judge Thompson, a silver-haired woman with sharp eyes, reviewed the stack of evidence before her. "Given the serious nature of these allegations, we'll begin with the video evidence," she announced, nodding to the court clerk. As the clerk moved to set up the projector, Culpepper suddenly lurched from his chair. His face was red with rage as he grabbed for the USB drives on the evidence table. "This is all lies!" he shouted. Deputy Klein moved with surprising speed. In 3 quick steps, he had Culpepper's arms behind his back, the handcuffs clicking into place. "That's enough," Klein said firmly, his voice carrying authority that had been missing during the mill incident. The videos played on the wall screen, showing scene after scene of gentle dogs being subjected to harsh training methods. When Fritzy appeared on screen, she stood out, repeatedly refusing bite commands while alarm tones droned in the background. Her training for rescue work was evident in every movement. "The evidence is overwhelming," Judge Thompson declared after 2 hours of testimony. "Mr. Culpepper's licenses are hereby revoked. Criminal charges for animal cruelty and fraud will proceed." She turned her attention to Tobin. "Young man, your petition for legal adoption of Fritzy is granted under a reactivated search and rescue exemption. It's clear this dog has found her true partner." Later that afternoon, they gathered on the ridge above Finch Creek. The old mill stood silent below them, a reminder of how everything had changed. Lyndon balanced on her crutches, watching Fritzy explore the ridge trail. "Thank you," she said to Tobin, her voice quiet but steady. "Both of you, for saving my life and for helping make things right." Zed stepped forward, his limp barely noticeable as he surveyed the valley. "Been thinking," he said. "We could start a Youth K-9 volunteer service, train kids and dogs together for community work. What do you say, Tobin?" Tobin smiled, remembering the boy who had just swept floors at the auction barn. Now he stood recognized, his bond with Fritzy officially blessed. Fritzy trotted back to him, resting her muzzle in his open palm, their signal of trust and partnership. She waited there, calm and focused, ready for his next word and the honest work that lay ahead. Thanks for watching. If any part of this story lingered with you, consider subscribing. I'll be here again tomorrow, sharing another tale that speaks to the soul.